My name is Casey Hersch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, author, and founder of LightYourSparkle.life. Many of you might know that I'm also an animal advocate. I enjoy publishing articles about the needs of the animal rescue community and also how to be more empathic and have more compassion with regards to animals in need and the animal rescue community. Today, I'm here with Larissa Wohl. She is a pet rescue expert. Let's get started. So Larissa, you have quite the diverse career, from Dancing with the Stars to news reporting to Hallmark Channel and everything in between. Can you share why you got involved in animal rescue and some of the ways you advocate for and help rescue animals?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for asking that question. I have done quite a lot in my 35 years. I got involved in animal rescue actually, not, I wouldn't say by accident, but it was almost, I was born into it. Let's put it that way. My mom was from England, and she was this crazy English animal rescue lover before it was kind of a thing. And so growing up with her in California, it was just normal. It was normal life to stop for a stray animal or run down to the shelter to see, what animals needed extra help down there. Or, we kind of quickly became the call for anybody that we knew that had found a dog or a cat or had, run into a litter of puppies somewhere and needed help. We became the house that kind of, they all came to. So it was just in my DNA, honestly. But because of my career in reporting and journalism, it all kind of came together because I started working in a few different markets as an anchor and producer and reporter. And I always worked morning shows, which I enjoyed the most because they're more personality based. The downfall of morning shows is that you're awake at 1 a.m., you're in the studio by 3 a.m., and you're usually done with work by noon, which is good in one respect, but it's very hard to socialize and make friends with those crazy hours. So after I would wrap my day at the studio at noon or 11:30 in the morning, everybody else is still working. So I started volunteering at all the different local animal shelters wherever I was stationed. And that's what really opened my eyes to the horrendous problem that we face with the way we treat animals, with communities, and lack of funding and resources and education, and how short-staffed these shelters are, and how these rescue organizations come in to help but can only do so much depending on their grants and donations. It really opened my eyes to how backwards a lot of the system is. And that's when I really realized I wanted to, dive in as much as possible and do whatever I could. So as a reporter and an anchor, I was always begging my news directors to let me do stories on the local animal shelters, whether it was the good or the bad. And most of the time they were like, no, nobody cares. They care about the human stuff. They care about all the crazy news stories. It kind of gets lost in the mix. And so I would always sit there and beg and beg and beg. And sometimes they'd say yes, and I would do stories. But I quickly kind of became the go-to animal person, no matter where I was located. And so I would get pitched stories. And I really just got so invested in how these amazing people work and how dedicated and loyal they are. And they're kind of cleaning up the mess of all these other people that don't seem to really understand how wonderful animals are. So just seeing kind of the juxtaposition of such great people and such, I don't want to say bad people by any means, but they just aren't as aware. It just really kind of made me know, or made me decide that I couldn't go back. Once you see that, you can't go back. And then when I started working at Hallmark, I was solely producing. I wasn't even on camera when I first got there, but as luck or fate would have it, they wanted to expand their network into a pet rescue space. And so I said, hello, let me do whatever I can. And they basically said, okay, good luck, see you later. And it was all on me, and it was wonderful. And that's kind of how that all came to be.
Yeah, I love the story, just how organic it is,
It
right?
was
Like it's sort of a testimonial to if you really follow your passion and set some intention, but then good things will fall into place where they're meant to happen. And the way that you're able to serve was, precisely the way that was best for the greater good, really.
yes. And I would also say a big lesson that I've learned in all of this is how what you think are your failures can end up being your blessings, because the job I was in prior to Hallmark, I really enjoyed. And basically, just as I was starting to really get involved in it, it went away. They moved the operation from San Diego. So we basically were fired without being fired for anything we did, but it just so happened that that was the turn the show took. And at the time, that was pretty devastating and upsetting and, kind of a, ugh, setback, but then that led me to Hallmark and to then being able to work with animals. So, it's one of those moments in time where it really clicked later on, and I could look back and say, okay, that's why that happened. And now I kind of have that mentality walking through life, which I really enjoy and try to tell other people. Sometimes you never know what blessings in disguise are coming your way.
For sure. And I think, I'm a social worker, so a clinical social worker. And similar to you, being sort of in the trenches of poverty and a lot of the just sort of miserable human conditions that a lot of us social workers see, it's not removed from the similar conditions that animals are going through. So I know that you were talking about how society kind of separates the two, but in the sense when you're in there, you realize that the human condition is just right there with the animal condition. And when there's poverty, lack of resources, burnout humans, mental illness, I mean, all of that, you tend to see a lot of these animal issues also right there. We might rescue a child from an abuse situation, but I guarantee you in that same home environment, there's going to be a colony of cats, for example, or some animal abuse situation that goes hand in hand.
I mean, I couldn't say it better. Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, just like with social workers or, other governmental agencies, everybody is experiencing burnout. There isn't enough money to go around. There aren't enough people to go around. There certainly isn't anybody kind of tapping on them on the back going, great job. It's kind of like going into the DMV. I kind of liken it to, you've got a lot of workers that are seeing a lot of people every day. They're not attached to you in any way. You're one of 1,000. And that's kind of how a lot of shelters are. Now, don't get me wrong, they've come a long way. And most shelters are amazing. And most shelter workers are in it for the right reason and have hearts of gold. But even those people, and this is probably true in your world too, even the ones with the best intentions can be changed throughout the years of dealing with very difficult situations. And that's why as a group, we do try to, comfort each other and support each other, because we need all these rescue workers to be on top of their game. And as I said, burnout happens. And so taking a break, having a support system is so important, whether you're dealing with children, young adults, adults or animals. It happens. It's a tough industry.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. I completely agree. And so jumping to the current dilemma, I think that you're obviously seeing a lot of is that people adopted animal companions during COVID and they adjusted to being in the home together for workplace, school 24/7. Now people are returning to work. Maybe they're starting to travel. We've got, horror stories of animals who were adopted, but now that their owners are going back to work, they're having behaviors, bathroom accidents, biting, ruining furniture. So we've got owners who are contemplating returning their pets. So I guess that's called owner release, because they think, oh, we can't do this anymore. We can't fit the animal into our new lifestyle. So my question's twofold. Like, how do we help the owners be able to hold firm and commit to keeping an animal during this transition? And what can the owners do to help their pets during the transition?
Sure, sure. No, it's a great, both questions are wonderful. This was a huge fear for us rescuers from the get-go. You know, I can't tell you how many people came to me with such excitement in their voices as to, you know, the pandemic is horrible, but look at the bright side, all these animals have gotten adopted or fostered or whatever. And aren't you excited? And yes, of course, I was excited. I am still excited. And many people who maybe wouldn't have adopted or fostered did and fell in love, and that's the end of it. You know, they wouldn't even think about returning the animal. On the flip side, we as rescuers knew this was going to happen, because anytime somebody gets an animal in a convenient time of life, which was the pandemic, they were home a lot, they could be with the animal, you know, 24/7. You know, life was simple in that regard. Whereas now things are going to go back, and there's going to be that transitional time where the animal's going, whoa, 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 this isn't what I've been used to. And the human's going to go, whoa, 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 this isn't what I signed up for. And it's no longer convenient. And I gotta get rid of the animal. And that is so traumatizing and horrible. So the first thing I would say to humans is that there is a lot of help out there. There's a lot of resources, free and not free. I mean, when it comes to separation anxiety, my biggest words of wisdom are to start separating yourself from your dog now. Small amounts of time. I mean, the big thing is you've got to kind of put your brain into the dogs for a minute and realize, just like a kid who's been by their mom's side for the first 5 years of life, and now all of a sudden the mom's dumping them at kindergarten, that's scary. I mean, they don't realize what's happening. So you've got to understand where the dog is coming from and have a little compassion for that and a little patience. So that's the first thing. The second thing is start creating those moments of separation while you are home. That way they start getting used to being without you or not right next to you or under your feet. So I recommend a couple times a day leaving the house for 2-3 minutes, and then obviously building it up. But even if you've just got to go sit out front by your mailbox and sit on the corner for 5 minutes, just to get your animal used to the fact that you're not always going to be by its side. The other thing is creating a boundary for your animal. So having them, as things progress, having them have an area in the house that they need to go in at certain times during the day where you are home, but they need to stay in their area. You can be freely around the house, you can be cleaning, you can have a friend over. That doesn't give them the invitation that they have to be at your feet every second of every day. So let's say a half an hour a day, they stay in their little spot. And I mean, obviously this takes time to work up to, it's not going to be immediate, but that's another good thing, is having that separation, small amounts during the day, small spurts, and having it even progress to the point where they have to be separated from you while they can see you and you're in the house. All of those things are going to create a kind of a calmness within them to realize it's okay. They are still safe. They don't have to be a Velcro dog to you 24/7. And as you do that more and more, when you leave the house for work for a few hours or for going out for dinner, they're used to that. They're sensitized or desensitized, I should say, to that. There is the option of medication for highly anxious dogs. That I would 100% talk to your veterinarian. I am not a veterinarian, so I cannot go one way or the other, but I have heard amazing stories of it just taking the edge off just a little bit for highly anxious dogs. I certainly wouldn't do that for just any anxiety. Sure, put them on meds. But if they're chewing everything, if they're getting into trouble where they're actually swallowing bits of toys and it's becoming an issue, and that's usually out of anxiety, it's kind of self-soothing, then I would recommend talking to your veterinarian about that. The other thing is getting a trainer. You can go on YouTube for free and sign up and watch lots of training videos that will give you great pieces of advice. Getting a trainer is even better sometimes. And I always recommend getting a trainer that can come into your home versus going to like a pet store group training situation. Because when it comes to separation anxiety, when it comes to behavioral issues like that, it's really important, in my opinion, for the trainer to see how you interact in your home. What triggers your dog? Because a lot of us do things with the best of intentions and having no idea that it's actually creating a lot of anxiety in our dogs. I mean, one example that even I didn't know years ago was when you first get an animal, and of course you want to love and smother it and hold it and bring it with you everywhere and carry it in a, a baby Bjorn or whatever, that can actually create a lot of issues down the road when, okay, now you go here, I'm going out, or, because you've unintentionally taught them that they have to be close to you at all times. So you've actually created a problem that you probably had no idea you were creating. And that's the great thing about a lot of trainers, is they can watch you and observe you in your environment and see what it is that you're doing and how the animal is reacting. Because honestly, training is mostly about the humans. Yeah. And I fall into that bad category sometimes to do the wrong thing. So I'm certainly not preaching to anybody. So again, kind of, I'm sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
Great.
For telling the humans, I would first and foremost say there are a lot of resources to help, and that you will figure it out. It can be very overwhelming. You can become very panicky at first. And I do that too sometimes when I bring in a new foster animal and suddenly I go, oh my gosh, what did I do? This dog won't sleep at all and it's howling all night. And I go, oh, well, you get into kind of your own head. It always works out. You figure out a plan. You get to know each other and how you work, and you make it work. The other thing are doggy daycares, dog sitters, dog exercisers. They all exist, and those are great tools to use when it comes to if you have to leave your dog for a few hours and you're totally freaking out. It gives them a way to burn off that excess energy. It allows them to socialize with other animals. It allows them to socialize with other people and be introduced to new stimulation. So that is all very beneficial to them. Last but not least, I will say people forget that training is a way to exhaust your animal. So just sit, stay, come down, twirl, whatever it is that you want to do, from being super simple to a little bit more challenging, that tires out your dog. It's like going to school, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. All I did was sit there and learn, but my brain is fried. Those simple things that you can do to stimulate your dog and keep them physically and mentally moving and exercising is very helpful when it comes to saying, okay, bye, I'm going out for a few hours, because a tired dog is much less likely to become destructive.
Yeah, that's great advice, Larissa. Thank you so much. And, a lot of things that you touched on, separation anxiety, because my profession is mental health. We talk a lot about separation anxiety between parents and children. And it's just so real. And I know, having fostered cats, I haven't fostered dogs, but fostering cats, that a lot of the kittens come in with a history of trauma. The way they came into the system was not good. And so they come in already with a predisposed anxiety because of that, risk factor that they experienced when they were really little. And then the separation anxiety, just like humans, when children are separated from their parents or the mother too soon, or there's that break in attachment, you'll see a lot of symptoms that young children will have based on separation anxiety, no different than a kitten. So I really feel like the mental health between humans and animals is so parallel. But I think as humans, we don't make the connections. And so we know human trauma looks a certain way because many of us have some, but we don't transfer that to, oh, okay, this is an animal who's gone through a lot. They've had some trauma. Now, separation is also a trauma. These symptoms they're normal and they're almost expected and they're manageable. And so, I think acknowledging what you just did about separation anxiety is real. Let's name it. And now let's look at ways to work within that understanding.
Yes.
And it's possible to, work through. And like self-soothing, you also mentioned.
Yep.
Like, all these different ways that we as humans also, we cuddle up with blankets, we tuck our heads under pillows, these things that are biologically normal.
Yeah.
You just mentioned the animals are doing as well.
I hope if anybody can take anything from that whole long monologue I just said that hopefully made sense. If we could shift our perspective and instead of thinking bad dog, you chewed up the wood around the door frame, think, oh my gosh, that poor thing saw me walk out that door and was chewing the wood frame because it was trying to get to me because it was scared. I mean, if we can shift our perspective and have compassion and just take that kind of moment to separate the anger or frustration that we're feeling in the moment and go, okay, why did Fido do that? What was it about how I left or what I've done the last 18 months and now I'm doing differently? And as you said, manageable. A lot of these things are manageable. And if you sign up and adopt or purchase an animal during this last, year and a half and use them for your comfort and for your safety and to make you feel better and loved and less lonely, please give them the respect of taking the time to try to work through problems that may arise now. There always are going to be those instances where maybe you're not the best home for the dog. So maybe you will have to search for another better home with people who are around more or kids that can play more or whatever it may be. It happens. Sometimes not every dog is perfect for every person and their lifestyle. But at least give it that time. At least try and exhaust everything you can before just going, okay, back to the shelter. You're now a little too much to handle. Because it's horrible. It only adds to more problems down the road for that animal. And again, they give us so much. We deserve to give them a little bit of leeway, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree with you like any more than what you just said, so well. It's like when animals come in, there's this sort of honeymoon phase.
Yes.
I feel like that's kind of normal when we have this new exciting event in our lives. And then moods happen and transitions happen. And then that honeymoon phase starts to fade. And that's, I think, when animal owners can sometimes start to question, are they the right fit? And, if you have birth a baby, we often just don't think of returning our baby the moment things get tough.
So that happens a lot. There's always things that arise that are tough and unexpected.
Yeah, every moment. I mean, I'm not a mother of a human baby. I've got, animal babies, but every moment, working with parents, there's something that comes up that's challenging, and it's having the resources and also, like you say, opening your mind to possibilities instead of, oops, I'm just done. It doesn't fit. I've got to, move this animal elsewhere because they're not going to work out for my home.
And I also extend that to aggression many times, because a lot of times a dog will bite or nip or growl as a sign of like, no, something's happening. I'm stressed. Like this is how I talk. And a lot of people are very quick to label, oh my God, that is a bad dog. When it's like, no, what may have led that dog to feel like he or she needed to express himself. Now, I'm not saying, that there are instances if you have a small baby around, you never, don't get me wrong here. Aggression needs to be handled and shouldn't ever be overlooked or like babied by any means. I would never say that. I just hope and pray and wish, and hopefully someone will take away from this to kind of shift that way of looking at it, as long as it's safe enough to do so and kind of approach it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think you're asking for greater empathy, like you said, greater compassion, and to look behind the behavior, whether good, bad. Look behind what's the motivation and what's the history that, this animal brings. Even if I don't know where my kittens came from, but I know from my little Paso, from the moment I got him, he was a little biter. And it was micro doses that I would expose him to, like touch. And it was such a tiny, tiny, tiny dose and a long, long process. And now he's my most lovable, touchy-feely cat, but he's still predisposed to whatever happened in those early years, to that separation anxiety. And like you said, wear them out. I feel like there are moments where I can just throw a ball up and down the hallway and he doesn't retrieve it, but he will chase after it. And that energy, all that angst, just like humans who exercise, and we try to move when we feel anxiety, it gets it out. Got to funnel it somewhere.
Yes, and cats are just like dogs in that regard. People forget that cats need stimulation because they're just, usually they sit around or they're lazy. We have this idea of that. But cats are the same way. They'll start chewing, they'll start biting, they'll start exhibiting behaviors that maybe you wouldn't want. And oftentimes my first question is, well, are they getting enough playtime? Are they getting their teaser toys? Are they chasing after fake little mice? Are they, getting to run up and down their cat trees or whatever it is? And start there and then see what happens before kind of going to the, okay, I got to bring this, kitty back. It's just too much.
Yeah. So on the positive side, you've seen animal rescue and people adopting animals change a lot of lives. So what are just some memorable stories that you can think of where a rescue animal just really changed their owner's life?
Oh my goodness. Wow. There's so many. One family that I really became close with through Home and Family, our show on Hallmark, is this beautiful family down in Southern California who the woman had seen me on TV with one of the dogs that I was showcasing. It was actually a dog that I was fostering at the time. And it caught her by surprise, but she was trying to work with her daughter who was just getting married. She had no time to really focus on the show or reach out to me or anything like that. Just so happened that a couple weeks later, I still had the dog and he was on the show again. And she caught it and reached out and I met them. They met the dog. It was love at first sight. It was so helpful for me because I had fallen in love with this dog and can't keep another one. And then the interesting thing about it was that he actually, was older and was suffering from some, health issues. And she reached out to me again a little later on, like a year or two, saying that she really wanted to rescue another dog before Brody passed, because she had an existing dog and she really wanted that her existing dog to have a friend before losing Brody. So we arranged it. It was a really funny story of how it was a lot of hoops that we had to jump through, but we found a dog, made the rescue happen, and literally like the next couple of days Brody passed away. And it was so beautiful because Brody had such an amazing few years between time with me and time with this family, and now they have the second rescue dog that they adopted through the show. And it never ceases to amaze me how intuitive these animals are and how they know what their humans need. And whether it's during the pandemic or whether it was another family that adopted a dog from our show whose son was really sick, and this dog wouldn't leave the son's side and just knew and slept in bed, to families who have kids with developmental challenges, autism, Asperger's, just delayed growth, and these animals are with them and can blossom them into a completely different human being that the parents never thought they'd have. And it's always just this beautiful story. This one gentleman who saw a dog that we have had on the show, I think he lived in San Diego, the human. The dog lived like Philadelphia or something. He saw this dog, something clicked that he had to have this dog. He went out there. He didn't know a lot about dogs, and I think the rescue had said the dog was a shepherd mix or something. Truth be told, he got out there and this dog is a pit bull. And I love pit bulls. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. And I just drove across the country, took the dog home. That was right before COVID happened. He's diabetic. He now wants to get his pup to become a certified diabetes dog for him, to help him with when his blood sugar drops. And he absolutely adores this dog. It wasn't the dog he thought he was going to get. It wasn't a convenient dog to get. He really had no idea what he was doing, but it's the perfect relationship and he wouldn't have it any other way. So it's just stories like that. And there are so many of them, and they really are. I always say the dogs find you, because you can go looking for the dog that you envision, you know, the smallest or the fluffiest or the cutest or the youngest, whatever. And yet, without you even realizing, this other little dog will just kind of pull at your heartstring for some reason, or maybe even a cat. So you go in for a dog and a cat jumps out at you and you're like, that's the animal. So I always recommend people going in with an open mind, because you really don't know which animal is going to call your name. And sometimes it's the one you least expect that brings you the most. The most love, the most happiness. So that's another piece of words of wisdom for you.
And definitely words of wisdom. Oh my gosh, because haven't all of us been guilty of this idea? I was always into, you know, saving seniors. I really had a heart for these senior 20-year-old cats who nobody wants because they're just not the fun little kittens. So that was my, I have to do this. This is my calling. Well, wasn't my calling, because as hard as I pushed to like make the destiny go a certain way, I ended up with 2 brother and sister kittens, and that was not what was in my cards. Now looking back, perfectly in the perfect order. But Larissa, you mentioned fostering's tough because a lot of people really struggle with letting go. And no matter how much you know that the animal's going to a good home, there's like some form of grief and loss that can really be triggered in people that sometimes is the reason why people don't foster. And it's not always enough, I think, for people to hear, well, it's okay because you're going to save more lives, because sometimes the pain of letting go is too great. Just wondering your thoughts on how you help fostering and letting go. How do you do that?
I think a lot of people are surprised by my answer to this. You don't fall in love with every animal. You really don't. I love all animals. I would never hurt an animal. I would never want an animal to be hurt. I would jump in front of a bus for an animal that just bit me.
Yeah.
But when it comes to fostering and bringing an animal into your life, kind of going back to what we started talking about at the very beginning, it's a tricky balance to find an animal that fits your lifestyle. And most animals that you foster aren't going to fit your lifestyle. And it doesn't mean it's any less rewarding. It's sometimes even more rewarding, because sometimes it comes with a little bit more of a challenge. And this dog or cat might be super shy, and you're like, well, I really want a cat that's going to snuggle. And maybe it takes a little longer and that cat finally does start to snuggle. It is even more rewarding when that happens. Doesn't mean that's the cat that's right for you forever. So I know that's hard to believe, and I know it comes with experience and doing it over and over and over again, because that's the only way you really do see all the different personalities and realize, okay, this is a dog that could fit into my world. This dog is a little young and needs a lot of exercise, and unfortunately I'm gone most of the day and I can't do that. So I feel really good about letting this animal go to its forever home, where 3 kids live on a farm and all they want to do is play all day with the dog. I know it's hard for people to imagine that feeling can exist, because of course you fall in love with them. Of course you bond with them. Of course there's a feeling of you're parenting them for the time you have them. But the more and more you do it, you really do get a sense, it becomes easier. And that's why, in fact, a lot of rescues won't allow you to adopt your first couple fosters, because they want you to experience that formula, that because the first one's always hardest. The second one, third can be really hard too. But once you get to your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and mind you, you may end up adopting one in that time period, it really does get easier and easier. And, I love all the animals that I fostered. In fact, there have been a few I've been so ready to pull the trigger on and keep. But I do always have to remind myself, which you brought up, and yes, this isn't enough for some people, but I do, think of it as, if I just continue to adopt them all, there's no vacancy. Sure. I only have so much room and money and, resources that I can give to animals. And if I fill every slot then I can't continue to keep helping others. And that does give me a sense of peace, even in those moments where I'm like, oh, but I just would love to keep this one. But I
Yeah.
know that there are so many more. And so, okay, I'll be a little sad. I'll maybe shed a few tears and think about them for a few days and check in and make sure they're doing okay and ask for photos and videos. But a few weeks later, I'm on to the next that needs me. So, I wish, and I hope, and I say this in the nicest possible way, that when it comes to fostering, it's not about you as a human. I know that doesn't stop the pain, but if you can kind of try to remember that you're really trying to do a service for them, it helps a little bit, just a
Yeah.
little bit.
No, that was really helpful, Larissa. I feel like that was probably the best response that I feel the most comforted by that I've heard. I mean, that really is. It's such a good perspective that it's true. You don't fall in love with every one of them.
Oh, I've had so many dogs that are beautiful and sweet, but they need a lot of exercise. They need to go run 4 miles a day. They need to play fetch for an hour. They, or they start getting destructive. That's not their fault. That just means that's not a dog that I can have long term for a couple of weeks, of course, or during quarantine when I was home and had the time. But I also know enough that that wouldn't be a good fit for them full time or myself. So when I find that home, or when the rescue finds the perfect home, yeah, it's sad, but at the same time, I know it's the absolute best outcome for everybody.
Yeah. Now, Larissa, I want to shift gears real quick because I know you have to run. You have a book club.
I do.
So I would like for you just tell us a little bit about it. And I have a few questions if you have a second to
Yeah.
answer about your book club. So
Thank you.
tell
Yes,
us.
it's called Saved by the Book Club. You can find out more on my website, savedbythel.com. And there's a tab up at the top that says Book Club. Basically, it's every month we read a different animal related book, most with a rescue lean, because of course that's my world. Not all of them have had that, but most of them. And we meet virtually about 2 weeks into the month to discuss likes, dislikes, what insights we have, share our favorite quotes, whatever. It's totally voluntary. If you want to speak, you speak. If you just want to sit and listen, you listen. I try to have little games that we play every now and then. And then at the end of the month, we meet again. And every month, except for one so far, we've been able to have the author join, which has been really awesome. So we pick their brain, we find out how they came up with the names of the characters, or if it was based on their life or someone that they know, or if it was total fantasy. And it's always very eye-opening to hear their process. So it's been wonderful. It's been going really well, and I hope to continue it as long as people want to join. So I'm always looking for anybody who wants to join. I mean, it's really casual. You can pop in 1 month, and then if you're too busy the next month, just bow out and pop back in. I mean, it's easy. There's no stress.
It sounds really fun. And I'm curious from your perspective, since I'm a writer myself, what do you think is lacking in the publishing industry with regards to animal content?
Oh, that's really good.
Like, what would you like to see someone write about, or that you wish was
I
out
would
there
like to
more?
see some more romantic love stories that include animal rescue themes, or animals who have been rescued, without it being overly cheesy and sappy, if that makes sense. It's been very, I try to do all different genres when it comes to these books. And I absolutely love the stories that are a little bit on the lighter, romantic, cute, girly side, but they're a little over the top sometimes and a little too sappy. And so I'd love that. The other thing that I love is, all these books have a theme of kind of, how a rescue animal has changed them, which is amazing. I would love some more family oriented ones. There's a lot about like humans, single humans who have run into a hard time and have found a rescue dog. It would be great to hear some more family stories because I know they exist.
Yeah.
So that would be neat too.
Okay. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And I think there's probably a lot of animal rescue stories that you are using in your book club that many of us don't even know about because
Yeah.
the world of books is really broad. So I'm excited to hear about some of those titles too.
Thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate that. And I would love for anybody to join at any time. And again, you can do that through my website.
Well, Larissa, you are fun. And this is my passion too. I could talk about this stuff with you all day. So,
well, I'm around, so we can always do more. If there are other animal topics that come up, I would love to join you again. It was a lot of fun.